The old dilemma faced by every mech IP. Are they comically destructive and go fast enough to paint the seats with your brain, or are they lumbering machines of war, vomiting rockets and ordnance as far as the eye can see? Of course, the latter feels a little more grounded and realistic, which is great in sci-fi, but the former is a devout follower to the rule of cool, and frankly, I hope both always have a place in gaming.
I've got your back, buddy. Hope you've got mine.
I grew up playing classic mech combat games on a beige computer like most 90s kids. Pretty sure Heavy Gear 2 is one of my earliest PC gaming memories next to Unreal. While I may have lost the PC bug after the near endless cycle of build become obsolete and rebuild got old, I didn't lose the love for gigantic robots stomping around. It's funny to see how the divide has grown between the two sides of the mech spectrum though. Back in the day, between the Battletech games like Mech Assault and MechWarrior, and stuff like Armored Core, the biggest difference really was only pace. At the end of the day, both sides boiled down to build out a mech that best suits the tactical situation and dive in. But not anymore. We'll get to taking a look at the most current games in both the Armored Core and the MechWarrior bloodlines, but we gotta start a little further back first. Heavy Gear at the time felt like nothing else my underdeveloped brain had played. Plodding along like a giant, big ol' cannon blasting away, and missing basically every shot because it was 2001 and 6-year-old me couldn't play for shit yet. I had absolutely no clue what I was doing when I would get to mech customization, and frankly, I'm not even sure I ever made it to the second mission. Doesn't matter though. I'd watched various bits of the Gundam series and Macross since it was the heyday of Toonami, and after playing this, giant fighting robots were now going to live rent-free in my head for the rest of my life. Fast forward to 2004 and I got my first proper dip into a Battletech game, Mech Assault 2 Lone Wolf. It was slower than Armored Core 3 that I had tried out at a buddy's house, but had a weight and impact that hadn't been seen in a mech game so far. Playing co-op and crushing enemies side by side was great for couch co-op sessions, and running in terror from an enemy mech after you eject from your failing machine added new tension to an already captivating genre of games. By 2006, the Armored Core we all know and love had started to crop up too. Armored Core 4 really set the tone and style for intensity in the AC franchise. On top of dropping AC4, FromSoft also tried to fill the void for fans of Mech Assault and MechWarrior. Chromehounds was super cool, and without it, the market for grounded mech sims on console would have been a desert. The multiplayer also used a map system that allowed players to fight over regions for their country, which added a great permagame element to it. From here until we got MechWarrior on Xbox One though, the big robot simulators kinda retreated to PC. Yeah, Armored Core 5 was great, but it was basically the only one. We had RTS games and we got Iron Brigade, which I do love, but it's not a traditional mech simulator. I want Battletech games, damn it. I'm sure I'm missing some honorable mentions, but in 2019, we got what I needed.
Priority target acknowledged, Commander.
Continuing a legacy that was dropped back in 2002 with Mech Assault being the only other dip into Battletech back in 2004, MW5 Mercenaries was a breath of fresh air. It's heavy, methodical, has squad mechanics, and a dynamic living map that's affected by the ongoing Fourth Succession War. We're back in the Battletech universe with bigger, better destruction and more intuitive control than we previously ever had on consoles. We've also gotten more arcade entries that lean into the automation and ARPG genres a little bit, but MechWarrior 5 was really the first one to catch my attention in a while. It's got some of the overworld and party mechanics I love from the Mountain Blade series, with the heavy, impressively destructive mechs that I've longed for. You're Commander Mason, at the head of the mercenary band inherited from your father upon his passing. You strike out to build your arsenal and get revenge on Black Inferno, the group that destroyed your home. Won't spoil any story from here, but it's mostly a device to move you around the map to areas of the inner sphere ruled by different great houses. Various regions of space have different mechs and supplies available, and depending on how many missions you've done for a ruling house, you get better prices in their space and can negotiate better rewards. As the Fourth Succession War progresses, you get contracts and missions based on events of the war, like taking out heads of a POW camp or holding a strong point so that refugee ships can evacuate, and it lets you feel like you get some say in what side you're actually fighting for. On top of the core gameplay being super satisfying, there's tons of lore to dig into if that's your thing, and makes it nice to have some info when deciding which houses to lend your mechs to in a conflict zone. I'm far from a scholar on the Battletech lore, but it's definitely worth a look for anyone who clicks with this game. Even though the game predominantly takes place between the varying battlefields and your dropship, it doesn't feel too restrictive. Dropping back into the mech bay and seeing your war-torn giant sitting in its rack awaiting refit for your next fight adds a sense of scale that couldn't be delivered back in the day. Like I mentioned earlier, the gap keeps growing between the two schools of mechs. Mercenaries plays even slower than some of our classic sims, but it doesn't feel slower. With the squad commands, deciding on position based on armament and weight, prioritizing targets, and navigating a 4-story tall stack of guns and armor, you are most definitely occupied during the entire engagement. Yeah, the speeds feel a little bit slower because distance scaling is way better than it used to be, but the tension as you close the gun range with a scout mech hurtling along at full throttle is so worth it. Now, screaming over to the other end of the mech spectrum, we have Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. From the start, I knew this isn't what I was used to. I played a fair bit of AC3 and dabbled in The Last Raven, but I never beat either one. And while I don't own 4 and 5, VODs of their playthroughs make for some solid background noise and they have tasty visuals. I had played some Souls-like titles too, but this really doesn't share much DNA with other FromSoft games aside from the fact that it's difficult. Very few games can kill you as many times in a row as this does without getting a little frustrating, and it's not even that this doesn't get frustrating, but holy shit, the endorphin rush when you finally beat Baltius after his fucking rocket storm. I was literally shaking by the end of that fight. Compared to MechWarrior 5 and its extremely grounded scaling where your 4-story tall robot is the same height as a 4-story building, Armored Core 6 really drives on the far future giant tech cities vibe. Skyscrapers tower over your comparatively tiny mech even though you're 50 feet tall and moving hundreds of miles an hour while flying. One of the early missions in the game, the Strider really drives home the kind of planetary scale they throw at you. This beast of a machine is 4,900 meters long, and it doesn't begin to fill up the map they give you as a battle space to score up with this thing. The story, while not the most engaging in the world, is plenty to drive you through the game when coupled with the awesome combat system. I won't lie, there are definitely some aspects of this game that I loathe. In one of the later fights against another mercenary, they're equipped much like you are. They have a pulse module like you can unlock, and they carry repair kits. However, they are not bound by the laws of human hands. When being hit and getting staggered or dashing, they can use repair kits, whereas you're unable to use a repair kit until you have recovered from a stagger or recovered from the dash animation. I like to refer to this as manufactured difficulty. I fully understand this type of game development. Some people are always looking for how to crank up the challenge a little bit more, but not all of us always want that. I'm sure it's a skill issue as FromSoft fans love preaching, but I just don't have the time to hone my skills in a game like I did when I was 16. Now, with all that said, nothing else has come close to occupying the market for fighting mechs at breakneck speeds the way that Armored Core has. Like, ever. While I have always gravitated more to the Battletech style mech sims, you really can't have one without the other, because someone's always gonna say,
but what if they went really goddamn fast?
And let's be honest, it's cool as shit when they go really fast. We'll definitely be doing a standalone video on MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries and some on its DLCs as this game eats away at my evenings. And we are anxiously awaiting the release of Clans, which was announced last year. Until then, keep stomping along, keep your lance alive, and we'll be back with more gaming content and music releases. Don't forget to like and subscribe.